Hi and welcome to Movies Suck. Well, yet again, I am on the hunt for news, and I came across this story, which I missed it on the day it came out, but I didn't want to leave it alone because it was interesting. Because as we know, Hollywood is full of, well, supposedly liberal and obviously crazy Democrats, which goes a long way to explain the sort of films we've been getting recently. So it's really kind of unusual when someone who works in Hollywood, someone who's in movies or TV or anything else, is actually willing to come out and say things they actually believe. Because usually when this happens, they'll be cancelled, thrown out, they won't be given any more work, they'll be just ostracized from the Hollywood community. So I was impressed when Samaire Armstrong came out that she was voting for Donald Trump and said that Black Lives Matter is a terrorist organization, a domestic terror organization. But anyway, let's get to the story because this is an interesting thing. An interesting and very brave thing for Samaire Armstrong to do. Very brave. I'm actually very impressed that she was willing to come out with this. So let's read on. Resurrection actor Samaire Armstrong explains why she is voting for Donald Trump, declares Black Lives Matter a domestic terror organization. Resurrection actor Samaire Armstrong recently declared she will be voting for President Donald Trump in the upcoming 2020 election, while also calling Black Lives Matter a domestic terror organization. Armstrong declared her support for President Trump in an over 7-minute long Instagram video and accompanying post. You can read the whole thing here, or go to Instagram, listen to the video, it's interesting. In the video, Armstrong describes herself as an independent, saying, "I'm not a traditional conservative, I'm not a full red Republican. I'm actually an independent. I do look at both sides of the party system and assess what's going on." She added, "I intentionally decided to vote Trump again." So she obviously voted Trump previously in 2016. Good on her. And it was kind of like a shot in the dark at the time, but let's face it, anything was better than Hillary Clinton. Armstrong then went on to explain why, because if you can't tell that Hillary, Kamala, and Biden are out of their minds and have been in politics for some of them for almost 50 years, and are the reason for all of this systemic racism and injustice, and you continue to vote for them to keep them in place, then I'm sorry, you are part of the problem, just because you've been duped into believing the Democrat Party are for the people. While claiming she's an independent, Armstrong would laud the Republican Party, saying the Republican Party care about people, believe in people, and in the opportunities, the freedom that we have to make something of ourselves. Big government gets in the way of freedom. Taxing the rich gets in the way of providing jobs for people. She's actually very correct here, because if you voted for the Democrats, you'd be voting for all those people that supposedly supported the systemic racism within American politics. And that's an absolute given. Biden himself, completely involved in all systemic racism. So it's an interesting thing. And it's a good thing to point out to people. Says Armstrong would go on to criticize the left, saying they might look presidential, or they might placate and pander very well, but they are not doing anything. And that's why they hate Trump so much. She continued, "Our freedom of speech has been infringed upon. We are not allowed to have conversations or diversity of thought. If you support Trump, you're a brainwashed idiot. And by the way, you'll be told you're a brainwashed idiot. But you won't be presented with facts. Yep, if you support Trump, you're an idiot. You have no idea what you're doing." Although they won't tell you why that might be the case. Later in the video, Armstrong stated, "The really interesting thing is, I'm getting messages from all over the world, from New Zealand, Germany, Australia, from England, and they're all saying the same thing. The far left is pushing an agenda of socialism and silencing anyone who speaks out on it. It's not just happening here, and that makes it all the more reason why it's important that we stand up." Exactly, this far left, socialist, communist, extreme group has been essentially taking over politics all over the world. And they're doing it in a rather interesting way. They're doing it by victimhood. They're not doing it because they're the winners, the people that can actually really achieve things or have actually achieved anything in the world. They're not doing it by that. They're doing it by, "Oh, we're oppressed, we're oppressed, oh, we're oppressed." And then once they get to the top of an organization, they say, "We're still oppressed. Oh, we're so oppressed by being in charge of all these organizations that are oppressing us." Makes you wonder how that worked, doesn't it? Makes you feel as if, they want to give the impression of being oppressed so they can hold on to power. And all it takes is for people to vote for the right people. We are not idiots. When they say, "Oh, we're social democrats," We all know that there's no such thing as socialist democrats. There's no such thing. But why do we know this? Because no country that's ever used socialism has been democratic. At no point do socialist countries be democratic. So social democrat is not a thing. Stop trying to make it a thing. It's pathetic. And she continued, because we are riddled with fear right now over speaking. And in America, that's our right. We have the right to speak out on this. They do. They have the First Amendment. If only we had that sort of thing here in Blighty. When new laws are created, they're supposed to be there to help people. You assume. Sometimes, though, that's just not the case. Sometimes they're there just to give someone else a leg up over the top of you. We currently have a law in the UK which says that if you hear someone say something to someone else and you feel that what they said to that person was, maybe racist or misogynist or anything of that nature, then you can report that person for saying what they said to the other person, even though you weren't involved in any way at all, and the person who they said it to is not bothered. But you get to report that person and claim that they committed a hate crime. It's absolutely insane that the victim of whatever speech it might be, who didn't feel like they were a victim in the first place, can find themselves being contacted by the police about a situation that they didn't even really think about at all, because someone else who was nearby and heard it just baffles the intelligent beyond belief. Let's carry on. She wrote on Instagram, Black Lives, they matter. However, BLM is a billion-dollar domestic terror organization. Armstrong added, it's okay to speak out against the fascist far-left mob. Call a spade a spade. No more pandering to their hurt feelings and safe spaces. There is a war on democracy. There is no ignoring the chaos and violence on our streets. This is unacceptable, nor is it justice. Absolutely correct. A lot of people seem to get confused and think that the far rights are the fascists. Well, that's a strange idea since, fascism comes from socialism. Socialism, fascism, virtually the same thing, just with a slightly different bent. And obviously in this instance you have the far right, who aren't necessarily fascists, can be fascistic, because let's not forget the horseshoe theory, which does generally seem to hold up. But it's a harder push to get far right into fascism, especially Nazism, which is really a completely socialistic thing. And it's absolutely true. You cannot ignore the violence and destruction going on your streets. A lot of people don't seem to realize that this stuff is still happening. They seem to think it's all gone away. That is not the case. The violence is still there. Black Lives Matter are still destroying things and burning things down. Antifa, who cares how you pronounce it? I really don't give a damn, because it's certainly not anti-fascist. Let's face it, let's take that idea out of the name Antifa. It's not anything to do with anti-fascism, because Antifa are full of fascists. They want to burn your books. They want to stop you from having free speech. They want to take away your choices. What does that remind you of? Yes, they are the fascists. So, Armstrong then went on to praise the police, stating, I support our heroes in blue. Refund the police. She added, I support identifying the breakdown of injustice in our communities and building up rather than burning down. Absolutely correct. We need the police. You can't have a civilized society without the police to keep things under control. We know what happens when you don't have the police. Anarchy and chaos. The police are a requirement. Alright, they don't do an amazing job all the time, especially here in the UK. We're used to the government controlling the police these days and feeling like we're living under a version of a police state. The country has gone downhill badly in the last 20 or 30 years. We can only hope that things will get back on track, but, well, the current government isn't making things feel much more secure over here. We had hoped they would be, on the side of the people. It's not looking great. And in America, things are looking even worse. Not because I don't think Donald Trump is going to get elected. I think Donald Trump will be elected again. But imagine if he isn't. Just imagine if he isn't. I wouldn't put it past the Democrat Party attempting to repeal important parts of the Constitution. Just like in California, I think it is, where they're trying to repeal civil rights legislation. Can you imagine that? Repealing civil rights legislation. They want discrimination. It's just that they want to be able to choose who is discriminated against. Don't be surprised if there ends up being a law that says something to do with certain races can be discriminated against and others cannot. This is a very likely thing to happen, especially if you let those socialist psychos take control of the country. It could get very, very serious. Armstrong then went on to describe former Vice President Joe Biden as a walking corpse. She stated, handing the administration over to a pandering Joe Biden, the walking corpse, who believes the black community is of monolithic thought, is a doomsday in the fight for justice that we seek. An elimination and restructuring of systemic racism cannot be trusted to be accomplished at the same hands that built it, she concluded. Absolutely, Joe Biden is just a figurehead. He's just a guy stood there with like a hand up the back of his jumper trying to puppet what he's actually saying. He's not really a candidate for the presidency. He'll probably last 6 months or a year after he becomes president. Maybe longer, you never know. And then you'll find out who's really, really holding the reins of power. Because it's not going to be him. Anyone who thinks so is a fool. And as we all know, that the black community is a group of free-thinking individuals. People who can make up their minds about things. They're not sheep to be led. They are people, they can make up their own minds, they can do what they think is in their own interests. A large number of them are going to be voting for Trump, which is a very sensible thing to do. After all, as she says, why would you want to vote for the people that have built upon the systemic racism that people have been talking about? Like Obama, he was in power for, 9 years? 8 or 9 years. And he didn't bother to do anything about the apparent systemic racism that had held him back from becoming president. Really, the systemic racism? Really? Systemic racism? They keep blithering on about that over here too. It's just nonsense. In another post, Armstrong also declared that the police should not be defunded. She wrote, "Do not defund the police." She elaborated, "BLM has taken us by our heart, has manipulated our mind and contorted our values. This is an act of warfare at the hands of Marxist criminals, woke, white, angsty, uneducated Antifa, who do not have the bandwidth to navigate an indoor golf course, let alone life. They are not bright, they are manipulative criminals." Excellently said. I don't really think I need to try and add anything to that at all, apart from to say that defunding the police is an extremely stupid idea. But we've covered that already. Fantastic, Samaire. Well done. She would also state that BLM is a domestic terrorist organization, writing, "They are puppets of an agenda. We too have been puppets. This must end now. White guilt, celebrity endorsement, and corporate pandering has funded this $1 billion domestic terrorist organization. BLM Antifa is destroying and dismantling our first line of defense against criminals. Our policemen and women have been thrown under the bus by spineless politicians. We owe the police our most heartfelt apologies and gratitude for their sacrifice," she stated. "We have willfully walked into a trap. It's time to get out. I know you want the best for black people. I believe most people do. I spoke in support of BLM. I wanted to help. This is not what you or I signed up for. Enough is enough. God bless America. I love you all," she concluded. Absolutely fantastic. And she's completely correct. These people are trying to destroy America. Absolutely trying to destroy America and just tear everything down. To the point where, as we recently found, where even self-defense is not an excuse anymore, because everything is political. It doesn't matter if you're just protecting yourself or your business. You are the one who is in trouble. The person who is trying to defend the status quo, the person who is trying to keep themselves, their family, and everything they hold dear safe. You are the people that are in trouble. Why? Because you're not a mob. You're an individual. It's easy to single you out. It's easy to attack you. The mob just found a way to attack you. They just turned up, started smashing your windows, burning your house down. The government will do exactly the same thing because, well, a mob's a mob, isn't it? It's hard to get hold of that mob. It's hard to control the mob, whereas you, as an individual, well, maybe no one will even notice if they throw you in jail for the rest of your life. You just brush under the carpet. The media won't say anything. You really have to look after your freedoms or they will be taken away. So thank you, Samaire Armstrong. Thank you for standing up and defending what is right. It's an important thing to do. We should all be standing up for ourselves and defending ourselves, our family, and our freedoms. This is Movie Sucks signing out. Leave a like, share, subscribe, and I will catch you awesome dudes on the flip side.